Good afternoon, Mr. Pattison. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us for this discussion. I'm so happy to have you here. As you know, I think you're the most famous person in compliance. I think you're the most connected person in compliance. You're Mr. Compliance himself. So thank you so much for agreeing to for this interview. For those who don't know, and I don't know if you're living under a rock, this is Mr. Pattison Boleigha. He is one of the most foundational members of compliance in Nigeria, and we're happy to have him here. I think we can let him introduce himself and just talk about his in a snapshot his journey so far. So, Mr. Pattison, can you just give us I know it will take long, but if you can give us a 2-minute recap of your background and how you've come along in compliance in Nigeria, sir.
Okay, thank you very much for having me today. My name is Pattison Boleigha. People always have difficulty pronouncing the Boleigha, but it is Boleigha. And I have been around the finance, specifically banking industry and the financial sector for over the past 3 decades, and actually became much more aware of the growing need of preventing financial crimes in the last 20 years. And I've come a long way, starting all the way from Citibank way back in 1991 when I started in Citibank in Port Harcourt, and I went through operational areas to financial control, and eventually I moved from Citi to Access Bank in 2004. And it was in Citibank that I actually first heard of and saw the seriousness of money laundering and fraud as financial crimes. In Citibank, we tend to have a very strong culture for compliance, and so the average employee in Citibank then was quite knowledgeable about compliance and specifically anti-money laundering. So initially starting in operational areas, like I said, I gradually shifted my focus to risk management and compliance. When I joined Access Bank, I started as the chief internal auditor and started then to start building the compliance department in Access Bank sometime around 2008. So I very much conversant of the robustness of compliance requirements in financial institutions globally, in their fight to in their urge to fight crime, and I saw that I was fascinated to see how without what typically they call non-kinetic efforts to fight crime can be achieved through anti-financial crime control measures. So over the past 20 years, I've dedicated my entire career to this field, and I'm truly happy that I did that, and I'm enjoying it.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. And I guess over the last 20 years or so, that's how long you've been in that field and been passionate about that field. What has kept you so passionate about it? Why do you still find it so invigorating when you wake up in the morning and you're thinking of how to fight financial crime? What keeps you going, sir?
Thank you, Tunde. Like I said, I enjoy doing it. It just comes out of me so effortlessly. Perhaps maybe also because of my background too. My father was a soldier, so wanting to be always fair and pursue justice, in everything I do, is a driving factor. But more importantly, in our environment today, the challenge of staying ahead of evolving financial crime trends and the role of compliance in ensuring that this happens in terms of the integrity of our financial system is a major motivator for me, and seeing tangible improvements in how our financial institutions in Nigeria and across Africa generally has evolved in addressing these risks that we are exposed to in financial crime that is growing by the day. It gives me a lot of joy in putting in my commitment to compliance, in an immensely rewarding way. For me, I find it very rewarding to be part of that contribution to improve the fight against crime through non-kinetic measures like the anti-financial crime measures. So the dynamic nature of these crimes, financial crime, combined with the opportunity, therefore, to positively impact this society, keeps me going and gives me the power to engage and focus.
Thank you so much, sir. And I like that you said positively impact society. I mean, I'm sure you've done so many things to positively impact society, but I'll just pick two important things, like at least for me, as someone interested in compliance space, has seen a tangible impact that you have positively impacted the society, is you were instrumental in setting up the I believe it's called the Committee of Chief Compliance Officers of Banks in Nigeria. And then also, more recently, you were also very instrumental in setting up the Compliance Institute Nigeria. So in setting up those two organizations, because one is focused on obviously the higher executive level of banks from a compliance perspective, and one is more focused on, if you will, creating and giving the foundation for the next generation of compliance professionals. So what gaps did you see in both instances that led to you setting up this or being instrumental in setting up these platforms?
Okay, thank you once again, Tunde. In fact, for me to discuss this, I must give credit to those whom credit is due. I am not self-made. I got a lot of motivation from a lot of people in this direction. So I will want to make reference to my former bosses in Access Bank, were some of the people that guided my mind in seeing these gaps you're talking about. So I'm talking about Mr. Ike Mokwede and late Dr. Herbert Wigwe, who were my initial inspiration with their vision to play in the world's financial system. They noticed the poor compliance position of Nigeria as at that time in 2004, 2005. As per our being put on the non-cooperative list by the Financial Action Task Force. They saw it as an impediment to their vision to build a world-class bank. So when I joined them in 2004, they made me see this also. So that was a very major turning point for me to see that there are gaps in the system. So they tasked me and my other colleagues, my immediate bosses, they tasked me and my immediate boss, then Mr. Taokome Kore, who was then the Chief Compliance Officer and the Executive Director of Operations. They tasked us to see how can we get our compliance officers to come together, under one umbrella, so that we can jointly, collectively address the issue of compliance in Nigeria that is making us being featuring significantly in the non-cooperative list of FATF, and because that was blocking their ability to expand their business and to grow their bank into a world-class financial institution to compete globally. And that was how I saw the gaps. And with that drive from Ibuje and Herbert, late Herbert, we started the Compliance Officers Forum for GIABA. We started the Compliance Officers for banks in Nigeria. Then it was called CC Cobin. So what did we see? We saw that there was a lack of structured, collaborative platforms for compliance professionals, as well as very limited capacity in terms of knowledge, to build the compliance and to drive the compliance efforts. So myself, and in collaboration with some of my colleagues, my staff working in Access Bank, we contributed immensely in setting up the compliance officers, the Committee of Chief Compliance Officers of Banks in Nigeria, TCCOBIN then. And then subsequently, at some point when I was the chairman of the Committee of Chief Compliance Officers of Banks for 2 years, I was secretary earlier on, then I became the president, the chairman. When I was chairman, I saw that there was huge gap in compliance knowledge, and the financial institutions are beginning to emphasize on the need for compliance. So we thought of the idea of setting up a compliance institute, and here we are today, almost 10 years after we were able to come up with the Compliance Institute Nigeria, and today we have over 5,000 compliance officers, who have now grown in terms of knowledge, increased their professional networking through the efforts in the institute, and we have been able to promote best practices, in compliance. So that was what I saw, and that platform actually helped me to ensure that today we now have a unified body of compliance professionals who approach compliance in the financial sector from a common perspective. And thank God that gap has now been filled.
But I mean, you've been in the industry and so influential in the industry for so long, and so I'm sure you can see that the industry has evolved so much over the last 2 decades. I'm sure at the time when you were involved with the CC coping, I don't think that you would have thought about the risks that AI and all those things could come. But here we are, and you are still in the trenches, dealing with compliance and financial crime in the age of AI. So, from your vantage point, sir, how has AML CFT compliance evolved specifically in Nigeria? And if you can, maybe you can talk about it on a more Africa-wide, global level. But specifically in Nigeria, how have you seen it evolve over the last 2 decades?
Very, very interesting question. In fact, this is one aspect of my life that I enjoy a lot, because I just saw myself, crossing a lot of sectoral boundaries and jurisdictional boundaries, to make my impact felt. So over the past 20 years, Nigeria has made significant strides in aligning with international anti-money laundering and generally financial crimes standards. So the implementation of regulatory frameworks, has evolved also significantly along the past 20 years. And so Nigeria has come up with institutions like the Financial Intelligence Unit as far back as 2006. And I thank God I was part of the process, because we were all part of the people that were interviewed by the Edmond Group when they were setting up the FIU. We have the Nigerian Economic Financial Crimes Commission. We have the Special Control Unit Against Money Laundering, and of course the Central Bank, which is the major financial regulator in the country. But we have other regulators like the Securities and Exchange Commission, Nigerian Insurance Commission, and of course the Pension Commission. These have all contributed to provide stringent regulations to enable us cope with the financial crimes environment in Nigeria today, and has helped us to improve the transparency and accountability that you see today in the financial market space. However, there were challenges like implementation of gaps that I earlier spoken about, and the pace with which regulation was being updated and the way and manner it was being updated by the regulators. And most especially, a major problem was corruption in the country, which, of course, Nigeria has been ranking among the top most corrupt countries, in the world, and that has its own effect in our ability to implement financial crime measures, and it remains a major problem. So we have seen increased engagement in global bodies also. Like you said, I can talk across because when we did what we did with TC in Nigeria, we were contacted by the GIABA, which is the FATF style body for West Africa. And today we have been able to, to expand what we did in Nigeria and TC to West Africa through what we now call the Compliance Officers Forum for GIABA member states. Incidentally, which I also started, and I was the first chairman. I just finished my tenure, and the organization is still there, and it comprises all compliance officers from West Africa, and that is the avenue through which we are able to make our impact felt, even with the Financial Action Task Force. But there's still much work to be done to integrate all the practices across Africa, because we find out that Nigeria seems to be in the lead in West Africa, but we have good practices also in South Africa, Kenya, and other African countries, Rwanda, and so forth. But what we're trying to do in Nigeria is we're trying to build it in such a way that we can actually align our practices with the FATF recommendations especially in the area of beneficial ownership and like what you said, the visual asset service providers, because of the predominant impact of cryptocurrency and digital assets, and of course cybercrime in our system.
Okay, thank you. Advising someone in a leadership position, whether as a chief compliance officer or a senior manager or even the CEO, how can leadership at financial institutions ensure that compliance is not just a checkbox, but actually a value-driven function that goes beyond just, oh, we have to do that, have we done it, tick, or rather than actually creating a culture of compliance? So how does one foster that within an organization?
Once again, actually, in my entire compliance journey, I've always been preaching one simple message: compliance is everybody's business. Compliance is not supposed to be a carry-on bag, for management or the board, right? Compliance is part and parcel of business. Good compliance is good business. So therefore, as we strategize as companies, as institutions, we need to, carry our expectations and obligations, alongside. That is what compliance is. And so compliance is not something that you sit somewhere as management or as employees of organization. You expect some people somewhere who are experts to be doing it for you. Everybody has to be involved. And that is what the leadership needs to drive. So the leadership in the financial institutions today must foster a compliance culture, where compliance is viewed as an integral part of the business success. I just think back some few months ago, some few years ago, while I was still in Access Bank, when the late Herbert Wigbe, every time they go for road shows to go and expand their business in Africa, he keeps hammering on the fact that they are taking compliance seriously. And the reason he does that is that the institutional investors, the global counterparties you're dealing with, one of the first things they look out for you is how deep your compliance culture is. So it means compliance is good business. Mm-hmm. So this involves compliance basically involves creating clear policies that align with the ethical values of the organization, and therefore offering you a continuous opportunity to continuously carry your employees along, and then the leadership should work by example. They should lead by example, emphasizing the need for compliance in every strategic touch point. All strategic intents must have the role of compliance inbuilt into them, not just a regulatory obligation. I mean, most times, and in fact, that's why initially you find organizations where they say set up a compliance department, they go and bring a law, maybe a secretary, a lawyer, and then they set up a legal structure. So that is not compliance, because the compliance is not only about meeting regulatory obligations. No, compliance goes beyond that. It talks about non-legal regulations like your ethical practices, your integrity, integrating compliance into the business processes itself that can enable you take out the cost of non-compliance, which will translate to bottom line at the end of the day. We should view compliance more as not as an isolated task, but as part of the mindset of the entire organization that helps you to make your business profitable, and worth the while. Yeah. I think that is how our leaders should take compliance and drive it down through personal examples of how they conduct themselves and set the proper tone at the top.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. One question I was going to ask, and it seems that you've answered it already, but I will still ask the question so that you can emphasize it. And the question is, so Nigeria is, I think no country can, in this day and age, can say they're isolated. So even if you have your local standards, you have your local regulations, everything is connected internationally. And so the question is, how can Nigerian institutions, while they are keeping up to date and navigating their local regulatory pressures, how can they stay aligned with what is going on internationally? Whether internationally from the FATF or from GIABA in West Africa, or maybe a recommendation from the Egmont Group or the Wolfsburg Group. How can they stay aligned internationally while kind of maintaining their local regulatory and compliance abilities and functions, sir?
Okay, thank you. This is a very important question because significantly the world has become one small village where geographical boundaries are becoming very, very, unrecognized, and completely downplayed, because the introduction of technology itself has made it easy for players to be in different countries at the same time from one location. So you no longer have jurisdictional boundaries. And so, as a business, particularly the financial business in Nigeria today, if you do your business without looking around what is happening in your immediate environment in other countries, then you have missed the point. So the global trends point to an increasing focus on some key elements, which is like transparency, particularly beneficial ownership and handling of cross-border data, sharing across borders. Nigerian banks, for example, are all over the place now in Africa. They are pushing the boundaries and almost getting to the leadership top leadership positions in financial intermediation in Africa. So one of the requirements of the Financial Action Task Force recommendations is for head office jurisdictions to make sure that all their subsidiaries apply similar measures as they have in the head office across board. So if you want to operate across board, you need to make sure that you replicate your policies and procedures across all jurisdictions. So as you grow, into various jurisdictions, particularly in Africa, where there's now so much financial intermediation with the advent of the new African trade zones, and with the increase in the inter-country deals in Africa, you must meet certain standards that are agreeable to everybody in Africa. But most importantly, you must then benchmark them to the international standards. And that is why we need to increase our ability to understand international requirements like the Financial Action Task Force recommendations and their interventions from time to time. For example, FATF introduced the travel rules to deal with virtual asset service providers. And today, the Trump factor is also a major factor. Donald Trump came and the whole world is turning upside down. He's more like softening the rules around financial crime. Now he says you can do business with African countries without even if you bribe them, it doesn't matter. These are things that are, so you need to be aware of all of this, as a business, for you to be able to survive.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. That's actually very important advice. I speak to a lot of people who say, they want to go into Ghana. They have their businesses. Maybe they're providing financial services. They want to go into Ghana. They want to go into Kenya, and they don't understand that as you go international, not only do you have to be conversant and with your local regulations, but also international regulations. And as you mentioned, it's the bar is no longer what is going on in your country. You have to benchmark it to international standards, and that's a very important point. We need to be able to start to think like that. So thank you so much, sir, for that advice. Sticking on the yes, sir. Before you go on, let me just add something to that. It is along this line that we have started some work now, collaborations with some top financial institutions in Africa to set up what they now call the Association of African Compliance Professionals in the Financial Sector. Incidentally, yours truly, I'm the one driving that effort, working with some financial institutions in Africa, just clearly to set standards that will benchmark international standards, at the same time make sure that all countries operating in Africa, benchmark the same standard across Africa. Okay, so that is one of the efforts we are putting in place. And I think it's important what you just said, because one of the things and one of the when you go to I have the privilege of going to some of these global conferences and discussing all international standards and recommendations. And one of the pushback that some people, whether it has merit or not, that they give is that a lot of African countries are held to global standards which they haven't had any inputs in contributing to. And one of the things that you are championing is a voice, an African voice in under. So we're carried along in the standards that we're being held to. So I think that's a very, very important point. The African voice in setting up those global standards and making sure that it's not just someone telling us what to do. We are the ones telling ourselves what we should be doing. So I think that's very, very important. So thank you for that. That's the initiative that you're taking up. Staying on this theme of advice and of recommendations, but also of kind of creating those benchmarks. We have a next generation of compliance professionals, or wannabe compliance professionals. A lot of people are seeing almost a renaissance of compliance. People are actively trying to get into compliance, and so historically people would have said, oh, it's only accountants and lawyers that should be involved in compliance. Obviously that's not the case. Compliance is becoming its own standalone profession, if you will. And so what advice would you give to younger compliance professionals looking to build a meaningful career in this space? How do you suggest they get started? How do you suggest that they keep up to date with what is going on? And how can they start to kind of make themselves stand out in the industry as it's evolving in Nigeria?
Okay, very good question, because this is a sustainability question you've just asked. How can we sustain this push in compliance in Africa? Even though we are not fully there, we don't have to dilute it. We have to just keep it going and make it even better. So my advice to young compliance professionals is, first and foremost, they must focus on continuous learning and stay curious about their environment. Compliance is a situational subject matter. In other words, it changes as the environment around you changes. So you keep abreast with what is happening. You need to develop deep regulatory knowledge, right? And then be analytical in your thinking. Improve your analytical skills. Like you said, for you to go and contribute your own ideas in any international fora, you must first of all gain acceptance, and the only way they accept you is when they see that you can articulate your points properly. So you must have good regulatory knowledge so that you can contribute the African perspective anywhere in the world you go to. You must stay up to date with industry trends and most especially technological advancement. Any compliance officer that still remains the tick box, check kind of compliance officer, you will not make any progress, because today you need a lot of technology in every aspect of compliance work. And then you need to be, you have to have strong professional networks, and that is why we are creating all these associations and institutes, globally. For example, the Compliance Institute in Nigeria is in affiliation with the International Federation of Compliance Associations, IFCA. We are a very strong member there. I can assure you that is one of the areas where we are also making our marks and making our own story told. I recently even contested to be the vice president, but I lost the election. But I'm going to do that again. So we need to be strong in our professional networks and have networks across all the globe. We have to always also understand the broader impact of compliance on the organization and society. See, even if we say, okay, too much, like we will say in this part of the world, too much Turinchi means speaking grammar and language all over the place. And you say, oh, how does it affect me? Just think about the society where you live in. How compliance can help you live a better life. If there's compliance everywhere, there will be less crime and you will have a better life. Let's even think about that. So as young ones, what legacy do we want to even leave for our own children? Let it be that this is what we contributed, in building a strong compliance culture. And then also, as a professional, seek mentorship. We wouldn't have the privilege of having mentors in our days, but we had senior leadership directions, like I told you, like Herbert and Ike. But today you now have significantly large number of population of compliance experts in Africa. So seek mentorship, and then cultivate integrity and ethical decision making. If you want to be a compliance person, I'm not saying that you're going to be a saint. Nobody is a saint, but you have to have top class ethical practices. Avoid anything that can stain your integrity. Very, very important. Honesty, very, very important. Right.
Thank you so much, sir. And if you could go back in time to a younger Pattison, maybe one that didn't have so much white hair on the side, what advice would you, if you had one piece of advice you could give him about leadership or compliance or just getting into the space? What that you said to yourself, if I knew this when I was 28 years old or 27 years old or 21 years old, what is that one thing, sir, that you would have given advice to your younger self?
Wow. Compliance is evolving, and staying ahead that requires you to be curious and resilient. So one thing I will actually put at the forefront for every compliance person is honesty. Honesty, being patient, and being honest. And in old age, you tend to lose a lot of patience. We tend to lose a lot of, you have seen a lot of things. But if I were younger today, one of the things that will make me stand out as a compliance person is that everybody will want to deal with me because I'm honest, right? And I'm patient, and resilient.
Yeah.
So these are the qualities I will if I were younger now, I want to display. Let people see it
more prominently. Yes, sir. Okay, thank you so much, sir. I just have a couple of light questions just before we wrap up. I know that you're a very busy man, so I appreciate the time that you've taken to speak with us. You seem like someone who has a very curious mind, sir, that you are just not okay to just be going. So I think you are, maybe I might be wrong, but do you have any specific books or podcasts or videos or documentaries that you have watched recently or listened to recently or read recently that has shaped or evolved your thinking? And when I say it doesn't have to even be recently, it might be something that you read 10 years ago or watched 20 years ago that stuck with you. Is there any such resource that you have come across, sir?
My greatest resource, to be frank with you, is the resources that I've been getting from the Association of Compliance Officers, the ACAMS. The ACAMS is based in US, and my early days that I met up with ACAMS as a professional body, the knowledge I gained from ACAMS, it has stuck into my what do you say? I can virtually visualize the entire study pack of ACAMS from end to end, because I read it, I listened to it on video. They have it on recorded. I listened to the recording over and over again. Excellent materials and resources from ACAMS, and that is why when we started the Compliance Institute, one of the first things we did was to partner with ACAMS because of the richness of their resources. The Association of Compliance Professionals, in the entire US, Canada, they rely significantly on the resources from ACAMS. And up till now, like you asked me, what video did I watch? The last video I watched last was from ACAMS, from one of their video series.
Okay.
So I recommend that to a lot of young guys.
So everyone listening, if you are trying to get involved in compliance, trying to make sure that you are at the cutting edge, number one, you have to find your way to join the Compliance Institute. Number two, find a way to affiliate yourself with ACAMS, as Association of Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialists. That is an organization that someone like Mr. Pattison for many, many years has still been getting value out of. So it's important that you continue to sharpen those muscles by engaging in those resources. Okay, sir. So final question. If you were not doing compliance, if for whatever reason you were not in compliance, what else could you have done? Is it maybe you would have been a footballer, or you might have been a basketball player? What else could you have done if you didn't do compliance, sir?
Definitely something that has to do with law enforcement.
With law enforcement, okay.
So maybe I would have been a soldier, like my father.
Okay.
I would have been a military man, a police officer.
Okay.
Or maybe if I failed to do all of that, I knew I used to play a lot of good football in those days. In fact, I would have been a football star, because I was playing actually in those days. I grew up, maybe many of you don't know, I grew up in Ajegule, and you all know that Ajegule had produced quite a number of good footballers to Nigeria and I was playing with the likes of Tyler Korowanta and Humphrey what's this other guy's name? All of them that used to play at Navy Field in Ajegunle. I used to play, but of course, I had to change.
Direction.
I had to become a bookworm to start going the direction I find myself now. So that is me. I would have been a military man.
But you've done extremely.
Incidentally,
yes, sir.
Incidentally, I didn't lose out completely from that dream, because today I'm a chief superintendent of police in the military unit of the Nigerian police.
Fantastic. So you had to
go to college.
So you still found a way to still do the two of it. So that's fantastic, sir. Thank you so much, Mr.
I went
Pattison.
to this college. Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pattison. This has been really enjoyable. I really do appreciate the time that you've taken to not only share from your wealth of knowledge, but also inspire the next generation of compliance professionals. Please keep doing what you're doing. A lot of us are very aware where we have partaken in the legacy that you started to leave in that space, and so thank you so much for doing it. Please keep doing it. We know that you have a lot more ahead of you, and so whether it's contesting for elections or whether it's setting up new partnerships globally, and we know that you're going to keep doing great things in the compliance and the general financial crime space, anti-financial crime space. So thank you so much, Mr. Pattison.
Thank you very much for having me, Tunde and Regfyl, and hope to see you in future.
Yes.
Similar events.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.